Let's just wait to let people in. All right. Well, how about we start and then everyone will join while we are. Okay, I think we have a good number so far.
Are we on?
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Founder Institute sessions. This is actually the first time we do a session during Ramadan, so Ramadan Kareem to everyone who's celebrating the holy month. My name is Mohammed Santrisi. I am the regional director at Founder Institute Middle East. We basically try to help and back startups in Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq. A bit about the Founder Institute. We're the world's largest pre-seed accelerator. We operate in more than 250 cities across the globe. We helped more than 5,000 startups today that are valued at more than $30 billion. And we do have the biggest, I would say, network of mentors, investors, advisors, exceeded the number of more than 25,000 active people in our network. A bit about funding. This event is about funding, basically, and how to raise funding in the Middle East. Founders are always hesitant to start a company, to start a tech startup. And this is because the failure rate is basically too high. We're talking about 90+%. We were able at FI to flip, I would say, to flip that number to more than 70% success rate with the founders who graduate our programs. What's the secret? We do help founders basically to avoid fatal mistakes, providing four main things. One is basically, it's a structured process. We're not talking about theoretical stuff. It's basically more of company building process, starting from validation up to funding, which is the topic of today. The second thing is the mentor network that we provide for every graduate. The third thing is it's very hard to graduate. I would say if 100 founders got enrolled in our programs, I would say 20 to 30 founders will be able to graduate. The rest will be dropped out of the program because it's too hard to graduate. And the fourth component is we provide lifetime support, starting again from the ideation up to Series A and beyond for each startup. So if you think that you are a founder that with a great idea and you have a global ambitions, you would like to be backed by the world's largest organization in the startup world, we have opened our call for applications for our upcoming program in June. We will be able to help you get to traction, funding, scale. Just head to know more about this, just head to fi.co/join. We'll also drop that in the chat. So if you guys are interested to look at this. All right, so that's a bit about FI. Today's topic is one of the topics that a lot of founders have questions around on basically how to become a fundable startup. And we're very happy to have our very own Elia Nuqul with us to discuss this and talk more and answer your questions. He's an investor, an operator, an advisor, a founder himself, and also a mentor for FI startups and actually more than that. I'll let him introduce himself. Elia, would you like to say hi and give just a quick intro before we start?
Thank you, Mohammed. Firstly, thank you for having me here. I'm honored to be a partner of Founder Institute. I think the work that you guys do with the startups is incredible. So I'm honored to be a partner, and I think I started with your very first cohort in the region. Just a quick background about myself. My name is Elia Nuqul. I'm currently the head of wellness within Fine Hygienic Holding. It is an interesting setup because it is kind of like a startup that is backed with a corporate in Fine HH. I'm also, as Mohammed mentioned, an investor and a mentor. I look after the family office investments. I'm the one that sees all the pitches through, gets the deal flow. And then I've also served on several boards. I'm also part of the Elia Nuqul Foundation. And as Mohammed mentioned, I'm also a co-founder of a couple of a startup, and I mentor quite a few. So happy to be here, and I hope that you'll all enjoy this session. And before I end my intro, I'd just like to say Ramadan Kareem to you all, wishing everyone a blessed month.
Thank you, thank you. We're so happy to have you with us and excited to dig deeper into this. Speaking of, please, if you have questions for Elia, just put them in the chat. We'll go through these questions while we are basically going through the sessions. This session is about you guys. It's about answering all of your questions that we can tackle. So please just shoot away and go to the chatting section, ask your questions. Let's start with this. I'm curious, Elia, how did you become basically interested in venture? And also, do you like being on the investor side of the table or as a founder? What's more appealing to you?
Sure, Mohammed. I'll start with the first part. How did I become interested in the venture world? I'm very humbled and fortunate to have had more than 100 years of business operational experience passed down to me from my father and grandfather before me. I've always felt that I enjoy coaching, I enjoy mentoring, I enjoy giving advice, especially when it comes to business. I've also seen the horrendous failures that microfinance programs have gone through, especially because it is just giving them money without proper mentorship, and then the money is spent and they come back to you and say, you know, صرفت كل شيء بطل معاي. Some people came to us and asked to fund a cow, for example, so that they can start producing dairy products. A week later, we get a call, the cow is dead. We actually don't know the cow was bought or not. So I saw a gap in that. And I strongly believe in the concept of give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. You teach a man how to fish, he won't be hungry for the rest of his lifetime. And coupling that component with the fact that with my interest in businesses, and especially in breakthroughs, in businesses that are solving daily needs, in businesses and startups that are also blue ocean, ideas that have never been thought of, the interest naturally gravitated me towards, you know, being in the venture world, investing, but being an active investor more than an angel or a silent investor. In terms of which side do I like more, I really can't give you a direct answer on that. I like both sides because they're very different in nature. I'm someone that likes to dig in, get my hands dirty, and get grinding. I'm also someone that enjoys mentoring, coaching, and helping individuals. And I think I felt my calling was when I joined the family office and started looking at investments. What I realized with a lot of founders is that they're technically brilliant. The ideas they have are brilliant, but they lack the business knowledge, which is something that I'm fortunate to have and feel that I can add a lot of value and help steer them in the right direction. So I would say that's it.
That's so good, man. You did touch point on the founder side of it. And there's a couple of components you mentioned basically to make a company successful. Would love to dig into this while throughout the discussion. But first, what's your thoughts on passion when it comes to basically to founding a startup? Because some people believe that passion, some people believe that passion basically is the driver for you to succeed. What's your take on that?
Going back to an earlier example, passion بطعمك خبز لباقي حياتك. It is that component of wanting to learn how to fish rather than ask for the fish. I think, honestly, it is probably maybe the most important aspect or quality that I look for in an entrepreneur for several reasons. Passion is not something that is widespread. It's actually, you only find a very few that have it. If you are passionate about something, you will go at lengths to make sure that you achieve that success. If you are passionate, you are willing to fail and fail and fail until you succeed. If you are passionate, you're going to enjoy what you're doing. And we all know that if you enjoy what you're doing, you're not working a day in your life. And like I mentioned, it is not that widespread. It is very important, and it's not something you can teach. I mean, skills such as business skills, sales, accounting, product development, these components you can learn, you can teach. Passion is not something you can teach. It's either someone has it or doesn't. And I would honestly say it's the most important quality that I look for in an entrepreneur or a founder.
I love that. I love that. So speaking of when you look for something that you look for in a founder or an entrepreneur, how do you basically define an entrepreneur? What is an entrepreneur? Is it someone who basically have a big idea and that's it, or someone who's solving a problem? I don't know, big or small. How basically, if you want to define an entrepreneur in your own opinion?
I think an entrepreneur is a risk taker, someone that's not scared to fail, someone that's willing to sacrifice everything to get everything. I think entrepreneurs are visionary, they're dreamers, but they're still practical. They're passionate, they have perseverance, their willpower will allow them to succeed, and someone that sees and believes that failure is not an option. You know, historically, entrepreneurship, the term was coined a while back. It wasn't specifically for startups. It was during maybe the Industrial Revolution, when people that, you know, had nothing and wanted to build something. With their passion, their belief in themselves, they were able to eventually achieve. Not all of them, but those that ended up succeeding and achieving, these entrepreneurs were the ones that failed several times, and all it took was that one success more than that failure for them to succeed. So I'd say these, in a nutshell, are the qualities of an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So if I want to put it in bullet points, I would say, so you touched again on passion, consistency, basically, and resilience. I think this mindset, you think this is the secret sauce for someone basically to succeed. Yet there's a lot of reasons for startups to fail. One of the top is not money, it's not funding, the topic of today. It's more of basically the team. Whether it's the founding team or the team inside this startup. Do you think that having a co-founder is something important, having a good team is something important, or just having a co-founder who can do the job, make the job done is what's important? What do you think about that?
I think it's critical to have a team. In the situation of a team and a founding team, it's not a case of 1 + 1 = 2. It's a case of 1 + 1 = 4. We all as individuals have our areas of improvement on a technical level and on a personal level. And as we all know, managing and leading businesses requires competencies in both. If I'm very technical in finance, for example, but I'm developing a consumer product, I need someone that understands consumer products. I need someone that understands product development. And the flip side and vice versa remains true as well. I'm someone that really knows what the market needs. I'm developing the product, but I need a financial partner or a co-founder that is guiding me and telling me, wait, hold on a second. We're about to get really deep in the cash flow. Because as you all know, what stops businesses from continuing and actually closing shop is not that they're incurring losses, it's the cash flow. So I think this is just a couple of examples, but I think it's very critical. You can't be the jack of all trades master, you end up being the master of none. I think it's very critical for the founder or the leading founder to understand what areas of support they need and find co-founders that are willing to join them on that path to help fill these gaps. It helps the learning curve substantially. With entrepreneurship, with starting a company, a business, there's always a steep learning curve. And you can only get it steeper and cut through a lot of the learnings if you have a strong team around you that's supporting on the different. And also, I think having a team and co-founders with you allows you to divide and conquer. There are so many tasks and projects that are at hand when you're starting a venture. So you need the ability and the flexibility to have people doing different things concurrently. Otherwise, it will take forever, it will take more time, it will cost more, and so on. So I think it's very critical.
That's great. So just help me understand. I have a great team. I have a great idea. I have a good market. I have validated everything. What do companies basically raise money before having some traction in their company? And when I say traction, I don't mean just basically sales. I'm talking about some users, maybe LOIs, maybe traction as broad as it is, basically.
It's a very open-ended question, Muhammad. Yes. I think ideally, yes, you want to have some sort of traction for several reasons. This gives the investor that much more confidence in your ability to ensure your ability as a founder and the founding team to ensure the success of the business. Again, I bet anyone to succeed from the first time. You're going to fail along the road. And having that traction gives the investor that confidence. It also allows them to understand the valuation better. You know, if someone is coming and valuing a company at 10 million without any sort of traction, not even LOIs, not even signups if it's a subscription, whatever it may be, it helps that much more. And it also gives you a pipeline to understand your projections. Is the idea actually fit to market? Is there a fit for it? Is there the need for it? All of these questions, I believe, will only help with an investor. If you don't have these answers, it's going to raise questions. It's going to show the investor that you have not done your complete homework. So I think it is critical to have some sort of traction. The form may vary. Some might have sales already. Some may have LOIs. Some may have signups. The format varies, but I think it's very critical to have some sort of traction as you come to investors to raise money.
Great. So if we want to put this basically as a component of a fundable startup, what do you need to basically do as a founder before trying to raise your funding round, your investment round?
Good question. I think there are key elements that you need to make sure you have in there. And that is to make sure that you have a good idea. For me, that entails solving a problem, improving a process, coming up with something completely new. I think you need to have at least your revenue model sorted, to understand your go-to-market strategy, to understand what your biggest cost components are. I think having that traction and at least some lead in terms of sales, in terms of traction is critical. To having a co-founding team gives the investor more confidence than having a lone soldier trying to run the show. The advisors as well, if you have advisors that are seasoned, it helps that much more because it gives confidence. And then finally, I would say, ideally, to have a minimum viable product, an MVP, that gives the investor the confidence in your ability to realize the product through, or service for that matter.
Great. I love that. So I have all of these elements. Where do I get, where can I go basically to get funded?
Great question. I think there are several avenues. You can approach VCs. I would tap onto the network. If there's a VC that you cannot get a contact of, reach out to some of the startups and the founders that are within that VC to get you in through the door. There are cold calls, cold emails, cold messages. This, I would say, is the least effective manner, but I personally respond to them, and I think I've responded to every single one. Irrespective of the response, I at least responded. There are grants, and I would say for me, ideally, especially in early stage, incubators might be more worthwhile than a VC because they help support you with all of the elements that we just mentioned in the previous question. There are also funds that invest, but you need to find the specialist funds that are investing in very early stage. But I would say these are the avenues.
Yeah, I would say if someone with only an idea, just basically go and literally engage with the community, go to an incubator, to an accelerator, if you have some, it depends actually on their mandate and so on. But definitely, no one actually, especially funds and VCs, even the VCs who invest in pre-seed and seed, they want you to be backed by someone else, even maybe some angels, maybe some friends and family, maybe, I don't know. just basically to de-risk their investments, because at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. It's about the returns of their own fund. There's a lot of ideas out there. There's a lot of people who basically create something that is proven somewhere in a different market, and they just copy it, which is not bad. And there are other people who are trying to come up with something that is totally new. Do you think a startup, basically in the two scenarios, do you think a startup needs to have their own basically competitive advantage, or this magic that these specific people have, the others don't?
Absolutely, Muhammad. I think having competitive advantage is very critical. You don't want to be a copycat. I think the investors generally look for that competitive advantage, and I can challenge every entrepreneur, whether they've spoken to investors or VCs or whatever type of investors, that they've been asked this question: why you? What sets you apart from the competition? And this is maybe the most thing that they hit on, and they want to understand more and deeper. I think it is one of the most critical components within a startup. If you're just trying to do something else and trying to be a copycat, why are you doing it? If someone's already doing it well and greatly, it will require you that much more effort and customer acquisition cost to convince an individual to switch from that solution to yours. Whereas if you have a competitive advantage, your sale is that much easier. If you're able to highlight that advantage, you're going to reduce your cost of customer acquisition and be able to get the traction that you want quicker.
Great, that's great. How do you think accelerators, since we are basically a pre-seed accelerator, how do you think accelerators would add value to startups? It's a shameless plug. I'm proud of it. So do you think, like FI or different accelerators, do you think they add value to startups?
Oof, definitely. I think out of the whole investor types and pools of investors, I think incubators provide the most amount of support possible. The value that they add is first and foremost in terms of the network. You asked me a question earlier: if someone has the idea, if they have the model, if they have all of these, how can they approach? An incubator can help you get that. The peer pressure from seeing the other startups that are succeeding and progressing well will fuel you to progress more. It helps you build the business model, validate the business model. It connects you with the right partners and advisors. And I think one of the most critical components as well is they teach you how to build a pitch deck and how to pitch, especially with FI, because I've been involved and I know of FI, the 3-4 different rounds of pitching, you even see the progress of the founders, and I can name a few even, that you see their progress over time. And this is critical. So I think these are maybe the most critical ones, but there are other also intrinsic kind of added value that incubators do provide.
Great. So speaking of the pitch deck, why do I need a pitch deck as a founder? Why? I'll just pick up the phone, call Elia, and I'll tell you, I have this company, it's that, and so on. Why do you think a pitch deck is crucial to raise funding, basically?
It's very important. It's the first thing investors look at. And if there's anyone from the audience that has spoken to me, they'll tell you that the first thing I ever asked for before the meeting is even to the pitch deck. The pitch deck serves so many purposes. It is your elevator pitch. It's your silent elevator pitch. That's what I like to call it. Because if you're able to really show what the business is about, what your plans are, the business model, the revenue generation model, and then also it highlights how you're going to get and achieve these aggressive targets that you've set for yourselves. What is the ask? What is it for? It is that hook that can engage the investor, especially when you're talking to investors that are getting deal flows of 10 to 20 pitch decks a week. You need to really stand out from that pitch deck for them to be interested in. If your pitch deck is not done properly, if it really is not clear and concise and does not really express what it is that you're seeking, what it is that you're doing, how you're going to get to where you want to eventually reach, you're probably going to end up at the end of the pile. You want to be on the top of the pile such that the minute there's an investment or an investor that's willing to invest capital, you're the first call that they're going to get into.
That's so good. In my opinion, I think pitch decks are basically the language that I can understand what you just mentioned, all of the stuff that you mentioned, and also it's the story. I want to see you pitching. I want to see how I want to see the body language. I want to see how confident you are. I want to see how well do you know. Do you have like some answers in your back pocket? There's various types of pitch decks and formats, I would say. But definitely every and each startup should have their own 30 seconds pitch and a proper pitch deck and a one pager and so on. So you can start the conversation with a prospect investor.
Hamad, just to add to that, actually, the other thing is that because investors' time is generally limited, you want the pitch when you're with them in person, pitching them, not to go through the overall pitch deck and start. You want the investor to dig into the details, to be able to provoke and poke and ask the right questions such that the time spent during the pitch is efficient, such that the investor already knows what the business is, what the requirements are, and has the right questions to ask you, in the sense of, why are you doing this certain process in this manner? Why not in another way? Did you consider this? Did you not consider that? And dig into the details that will get you that much ahead in the process of getting that investment that you're looking for.
We have one of the audience, Hanan, actually, she said she had around 11 pitches and I believe versions of that pitch. So it's a pitch deck basically is you reiterate and reiterate and reiterate based on the feedback that you just mentioned from these investors. How can a founder approach investors? You did tap a bit on this. You said cold calls or cold emails. You received tons of these, I believe. Also, what do you think is the best way for a founder to approach an investor?
There are several ways. I think one of the most is through connections. If you know other founders that are, like I mentioned earlier, parts of other VCs, to ask for a connection, referrals. I mean, again, same concept, the cold messages and emails still, I think also the incubators and the VCs would be able to connect you to investors. And when you approach an investor, I would say, if you have a compelling story to tell, start with that story. I care more about the entrepreneur in early stage than I do about anything else within the business. Yes, it needs to check certain boxes in the sense that the business model makes sense, but I would focus on the stories on your personal story as you start. I would even mention every single failure that you've been through more than the successes that you've achieved, because there are learnings from that. But I would say it's through networking, it's through the connections, it's through the VCs, it's through the angel networks that are starting to become more widespread. But yeah.
Great, that's so good. Assuming that I took your advice and I met with these investors and they said no, what should I do?
Do not give up. Stay after them. Some investors do not like this, do not appreciate it, but it shows the resilience. And what I would focus on more is stay after them, not in the sense of nagging them. Understand what it is or what the reasons are that they did not decide to invest in. Try to see how you can address these concerns. The other thing I'll say is that if an investor says no, that doesn't mean it's done. What you could do is you have their email, you have their contact information, keep them updated on the progress, because they might be keeping an eye out on you to see how you progress. You might, throughout your progression, address a couple of the items that they were on the fence and maybe decided not to invest because of. And there are so many stories that, I can share that show how that level of perseverance and that resilience and that continuity, especially showing these improvements, have ended up with investors. I would also say that it could be sometimes a blessing in disguise. You don't want an investor that doesn't believe in you, that doesn't believe in your business. He'll make your life hell. And continuously, again, update them. They might continue to be interested, they might not, but that's the reality of the matter. Don't give up, keep going after other investors. So that investor that said no, after they eventually see or speak to another investor that invested, might get that FOMO and decide that they want to invest. So I would say do not give up and keep the investor updated.
The updated part is, I think, is crucial, because again, this basically will help them understand more how passionate, resilient, the growth that you have and everything else. And I would say you need to meet with 50 to 100 at least investors to get a yes. And the good news is that you only need one yes. And investors will start basically piling up on that specific startup because they went in because of the success that you already did. And I always say to founders that, trust me, if you are building the right thing and you are moving in the right pace and so on, you don't need to look for investors. Investors will look for you. What is an immediate...
Muhammad, just to touch on that, I don't think entrepreneurs understand and founders understand how often investors discuss the startups and share insights, share thoughts about other startups and how much they talk about them. If I'm invested in a startup that I know needs or is looking for an investor, I'm going to speak to my fellow investors and tell them, I think this is a great opportunity. I think they undermine that. So I would stress on that as well.
From your perspective, this is your own opinion. What do you think is basically a red flag when you see a founder who's pitching basically to you?
For me, the biggest, and that's maybe my style, my investment style, someone that comes to me, I'll tell you several things. One is someone that cannot answer a critical part of the pitch or of their business model. I'll give you an example. If someone is came up with an idea of a supplement, for example, and then you come to ask them, how can you, and it's outsourced manufactured, how can you control the quality, make sure that everything is on point, they have the right certifications, they are FDA approved, they have GMPs, if they don't know the answer to that, that's a red flag to me. This is one of the most critical, because with food and beverage, for example, someone is taking it in, someone's consuming it, health is at risk. So the critical components, if you're unable to answer that, that's a red flag. Another bigger red flag for me is someone that's building a business to sell. I want to invest in people that want to build a business that will eventually pay their bills, that they want their children to be proud of something that they started. Another red flag to me is someone that's looking for a quick hit and run or a quick one-off, someone that's looking for returns tomorrow. This is not the type of venture for you. If you want quick returns tomorrow, go to the stock market, go to crypto, go to NFTs, go to a different, don't sit and build a business if you want your return tomorrow. And I would say the last, but maybe most important, is lack of passion. Passion, passion, passion. Passion is everything. People maybe underestimate the value of passion. If passion to some extent gives someone structure, gives them, structure is not the right word, it will come, but it gives them discipline. If you're passionate, you're going to want to succeed. To succeed, you understand that you need to be structured, that you need to be disciplined. And so these, I would say, are the 3 or 4 kind of biggest red flags for me.
What about from the founder's side? What are some red flags the founder should basically avoid when it comes to investors?
I think this is a very important point, Muhammad, and maybe something that I touched on throughout my mentorship sessions. And that is, as an entrepreneur and as a founder, you have the right to select your investor. Investors have different appetites, they have different value adds. a couple of things. One, make sure that if you're bringing in a strategic investor, that they are going to deliver on their value add and what they suggested. You have every right to ask them all of the questions. You have every right at the end of the call or at the end of the pitch or at the end of the meeting to say, you know what, thank you, but I'm looking for another investor. You're not the type of investor that's right for me. I think it's critical to understand that. For early ventures, I would think a red flag for me is someone that's, again, looking for quick returns, because they're going to change your whole business model and the way that you're building the foundation of the business. They're going to end up sacrificing some of your investments, which are long-tailed investments, for sustainable growth to grow tomorrow. And then you're going to realize tomorrow, once you've hit that milestone, okay, this is not sustainable. I cannot, this is not it's not sustainable. So I would say that a red flag for investors is an investor that's looking to make return tomorrow, an investor that's not willing to support. But entrepreneurs and founders need to also understand that sometimes an investor that leaves you completely alone to do your thing could be a good thing. It's better than an investor that's nagging you day in and day out. Where is my report? Where is this? Especially in the beginning, because you're in the phase you need to build. Building takes time. If you want to build the proper foundation, it will take you time to get there. It doesn't happen overnight.
That's so good. I want to end, before we get to the Q&A part, I want to end with, what's the number one advice that you give a founder?
Okay. Number one advice. It's a couple of advices maybe within the صياغة الحكي. Don't ever give up. Keep going and keep going. If you're scared of failing, don't even start. You're going to fail. You're going to hit a million walls. If you have the resilience and be resilient, you will break down these walls and you will succeed. You will have naysayers along the way, people that will tell you this will not work, this ما بتزبط, لا ما راح تنفع, ما راح تنجح. Use that energy to fuel you. Be passionate, believe in yourself. I understand that confidence takes time to build, but have the confidence. The fact that you already took the initiative to start, you're already ahead. Not everyone, a lot of people sit and say, I have this brilliant idea. What are you doing about it? Are you just sitting and waiting for someone to do it? Keep going. Don't let anything stop you. Believe in yourself, as hard as it may be in some very critical times. Expect to fail. Don't be scared of it. All it takes is that one more time to succeed than you fail. And yeah, I would say these are in a nutshell. And again, if you're looking for quick returns, if you're not looking to work day and night, if you're not looking to work 24/7 to be on top of it, don't even bother. Don't even bother. You need to understand that this is a life sacrifice. But if you persist, if you keep staying the course, if you keep doing everything that you should be doing, you will succeed. And we have a saying, my grandfather always told us, لابد من أن تؤدي الضربات المتتالية إلى نتيجة. You're going to keep getting hammered. All it takes is that one more time.
That's so good, man. I love every bit of it. Literally, I think if you keep trying and failing specifically, you learn more from anything else you succeeded on. So you succeeded.
Just to add to that, the failure is not wrong. It's not bad. It's a good thing. It's bad if you don't learn from it and you do the same mistakes repeatedly. Failure actually teaches you more than success, because success, when you succeed, you sometimes don't know what was the critical factor that led to that success. However, when you fail, you know exactly what the reason of failure was. And when you work on that, the next time, if you fail, you know that there was another component that was missing. And as you start building on these blocks from failure, you will eventually have a fortified castle.
100%. All right. So we have a couple of questions we can go through in the last 5 to 10 minutes. Is having a partner a must when basically building a startup, or can this be done with only one person?
إيد واحدة ما بتزقف لحالها. I think it's always better for several reasons. Like I mentioned earlier, you might be brilliant in one component, in 2, 3, 4 components, but it needs to be a complete cycle that's hand in hand working together. Also, in terms of starting a venture, you can do it by yourself. It will take you much longer. It will cost you much more, and your chance of success is less. It has been proven that working in teams is far more successful than working individually. That is if you have the right team in place.
I would say team is much, much more important than the idea. There are brilliant people who are selling silly ideas, and it's growing exponentially just because of the team.
Muhammad, I'll add to that. There's that concept of lateral thinking, Edward de Bono. You cannot do lateral thinking. It doesn't work by yourself. It needs, I have an idea and I'm sitting with the team, we're discussing the idea, especially having a diverse team. Someone comes up with an idea that improves mine. Someone else comes up with another idea that improves the other idea. It becomes a beautiful cycle of continuously improving the idea and the business model to get to a point where you have something concrete that will succeed.
On that, sharing your idea, this will basically evolve it more. And my red flag as an investor is signing an NDA before receiving a pitch. I mean, if I have the cup, if I have your pitch deck, if I have the idea and I like the passion, I will never be able to do this. It's you, it's the person who's behind it. So please share your ideas. The more you share your idea, the more basically it becomes stronger, and the more you validate, the more you get feedback from people, whether friends, family, investors, mentors, and so on. And we've seen this throughout the program. Actually, you just mentioned that giving someone a feedback in a session and meeting them like 2 months later, you saw the progress because of the feedback basically they received. Another question,
Muhammad, just to add to that, it's also important to have a devil's advocate, to provoke and poke some holes that they might see, and a team will be much more comfortable in giving you that honest feedback as opposed to someone that might be otherwise reserved to do so.
True. One of the questions, how can you find a co-founder in the Middle East or in Jordan?
Very good question. I think through social media, through LinkedIn, for example, you can leave posts through the VCs and the incubators, through the network. I mean, you might not find them immediately. And that is part of the work that you're required to do, is to make sure that you find the right partner. I would ask friends if they know anyone that is good in a certain field, that is strong in that field of competency where you're lacking or you need that for the business. And that is why I think why it's very critical for founders and entrepreneurs to attend and go to networking events. It is so critical. You meet people that you don't know. I'll share with you a story. I met someone through a networking boot camp 7-8 years ago. Today we invest together, and we've invested in 3-4 ventures together.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure that if we want to come up with a startup, that we could be founders, because we complement one another in our skill set. And actually, if you look at VCs as well, touching on an earlier point, if you look at VCs, one of the most successful VCs out of Silicon Valley, Kleiner Perkins, KPCB, they actually have a diverse set. There's no one individual that takes a decision on an investment. Quite the contrary. They have people, a diverse set of advisors and decision makers that collectively have to come up with the decision. So it's always important to have a team.
Great. We have another question. I don't know how can we tackle this, but we have a problem in Jordan that no banks give loans for startups unless they already worked for at least 1 year with a proven track record. How can can I get seed funding in such cases? So it's about traction.
Yeah, هلا لا can you repeat it just to make sure
We have a problem that banks don't give loans for startups, which is understandable because of basically the risk. So how if this person is not able to get their hands on cash, either loans or basically funding, so how can they get seed funding?
And I wanted to understand, is it specific about a bank, or is it that they could not find any funding at all?
They can't find any funding at all.
You need someone to believe in you. And if you believe in yourself, someone will believe in you. If you touch on the points that we mentioned when Muhammad was asking, how can you build that traction? Is traction necessary? If you have the business model right, if you have your traction, if you have at least LOIs or whatever format of traction, you will find someone. Again, it follows the same principles of everything to do with starting a business. Don't give up. Keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. Nothing comes easy. Everything comes with grit, and keep knocking on doors. Doors will eventually open. It might not be today. Utilize that time that you have to perfect your business model, to improve the areas that your idea needs improvement. Maybe you did, and try to understand why you're not getting the funding and address those issues.
100%, yes. Maybe you're not able to basically raise, just to double tap on what Elia is mentioned, or to reiterate, maybe you do have some gap somewhere. That's why they're not basically investing in your company. However, banks, I would advise any startup not to basically approach a bank, because it's risky. It's risky. I mean.
You don't want a loan. You don't want a loan as you start.
100%.
You already have a lot of cash outflows going on in the business. The last thing that you want is to get caught up in interest payments and have a bank come and take over your business while you didn't even start.
100%. Another question is, one of the founders is asking that he approached an incubator and apparently they accepted him, but they want to own 7% without funding, without the funding component. So it's basically more of an incubation. They will take 7% equity without funding. What's your take on that? Definitely, since it's an incubator, it's very early stage.
Yeah. I would ask myself, do I want this type of incubator that already wants that much equity out of my business at the beginning of my road? Is that the right incubator for me? Is that the right partner? Secondly, I could tie it to an incentive. I'm willing to give you maybe 2-3% for your services. If you're able to get me investors that end up, I can give you an added couple of percent. There's always a way around it. The beauty of entrepreneurship, of founding startups and of startups is that there's no rule book. It's an art, it's not a science. It's how you position it, how you go around things, and how you build it. And each one has its own uniqueness in its different ways. So I would say you need to ask yourself, is this the right incubator for me? And then try to work out another solution, look for other investors, other incubators.
Cool. I like this question actually. This clarifies which one is easier to convince, okay? An angel or a VC?
Very good question. I think an angel is easier to convince than a VC because of the selection process and the process of an investment. A VC usually has a committee, an investment committee that will look after it. An angel investor is just themselves. They either decide to invest or not. So I would say it's easier with an angel investor.
Yeah, and VCs, they have a pipeline of, I would say like.
And what they look for is very different as well. I mean, I don't want to generalize too much, but I tend to feel that VCs are very financially driven. They will focus more on the financial projections and try to provoke and challenge that, whereas an angel investor could be looking at the business model and the team more than the financial components.
Yeah, which is a nice segue to the next question. Is it risky? Is risky startup with an MVP appealing to VCs? That's one part of it. Are they looking for safe investments as most VCs do? Or basically they are expecting 10x or 20x as a return on their investment?
Okay. Can you repeat the first part? Sorry.
Is a risky startup with an MVP only appealing to VCs?
Higher risk, higher reward. That's how they look at it. You also need to understand the mandate of the VC before you approach them and start talking to them. Some do look for these risky ones and are willing to take a bet. Some are looking for safe investments. It depends on their appetite. So try to understand that. An MVP is brilliant that you have that already. It makes your sale or your pitch that much easier, that you're able to do the product or service. But again, I would understand the VC that I'm talking to. What is their appetite? Are they interested in something such like that? If their investments are majority, because the way that VCs build it is they have a risk appetite and the risk portfolio that they look at and their conviction of the success of this startup. Some will have a very safe one and a very risky one to offset one another. So I would engage with the VC to understand more what their appetite is and if they are willing to take, to invest in something that's very risky. Every VC differs in their mandate, in their style, in what types of investments they're looking for, and so on. So I would understand the full spectrum and go and speak to the ones that appeal to you and share the same vision.
That's so good, Elia. We'll stop here, but thank you so much for your time. This was fun. Actually, it's fast.
Very fast, yeah.
A lot of what you shared is basically crucial for any startup. Actually, I would say in any given stage, not only an earlier stage of their startup. So thank you again for joining us, and we will see you, of course, in more sessions. And thank you everyone who joined us for this session. We're happy to have you also. We do have another event on the 27th of April. It's basically for the non-tech founders. It's titled as Turn Your Idea into an MVP without a technical co-founder, with one of our mentors who's a brilliant person in this. So tune in also. Again, thank you. I truly enjoyed this, and we will talk soon.
Thank you, Muhammad, and thank you all that tuned in. I think the last thing that I would like to say is obviously Ramadan Kareem, and inshallah shahr Mubarak alaykum jami'an. But more important than that, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Keep going after your idea, keep persevering, keep being resilient, and you will succeed.
Great. All right.
Thank you, Muhammad.
We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Likewise. Take care.
Bye-bye.